Hey, it's JC from Okoto Labs, and today we're going to be modeling a drone in Plasticity. Let's jump in. I'm going to show you the process that I use to create organic forms like vehicles and spaceships, primarily using lofts. So let's go ahead and click on this cube and delete it. And then let's go to our top view so that we can import some reference images. Go ahead and click on the P menu and then on Import and Append. And let's select the drone top view. You can get these reference images in the description below. Next, let's zoom out a bit, select your reference, and then press S twice and hover outwards. As you're hovering outwards, you can press the number 4, and that'll take it to 4 units. Left click once, and then I'm going to hit OK down here. Next, I want to create a bounding box here with a rectangle, because in different views, you can't really see this image plane that we just created. And we're going to need that to make sure that our other views are in the same scale. So click on this rectangle over here, and then let's select center rectangle. And click on the center, and then hover outwards. And let's just make sure it kind of fits the size of our design. And if you're having trouble sizing it in a smaller increment, you can hold down Shift. And don't worry if you're missing some areas. You can press 1 and select these points, and then press G and move that upwards so it matches correctly. And let's do the same thing for this area. Great. So now let's go to the front view, and now you can see the size of our drone here in the front view. So go ahead and click on the P menu again, import and append, and this time let's select the drone front JPEG. Great. So now you can see that this line represents the size of our drone, and we need to scale our front image. So click on it on the outliner over here, press S twice, and let's just shrink it down so that we match it, and then press G and move it upwards. So you can see that we can still move it a little bit more. I'm going to hold Shift, S twice, and hold Shift so we have a smaller increment, and press OK. And you can see it's not aligned in the center, so let's just press G one more time. And let's move it on the x-axis until that's centered. Great. So now they look like they're pretty much the same size. Next, let's go to the right view and do this one more time. P menu, import and append, drone side JPEG, and again, we're going to match this line with this blue line. Make sure you're in body mode. Select your reference image in the outliner and press S twice, holding down Shift if you want a subtle increment. And let's move it up on the Z axis. You can scale it up a little bit more. Great. So now you have your references at the correct size, and you can go ahead and hide this rectangle. So they're all intersecting, and we don't want that since it'll get in the way of our model. So the next thing you need to do is just select them and move them out of the way. I'm going to select the side view and move it on the x-axis towards the left. And then the top view, I'm going to select that one and move it downwards. And the front view, move it backwards. It doesn't matter how many units, as long as you have enough space that doesn't overlap with your model. Now we're going to make sure that we can see this model we're building clearly, and these image planes don't get in the way. So go ahead and select all of them, and then press M to go into material settings, and change the depth to front, and click on the opacity checkbox, and change that to 0.3, and press OK. And finally, you want to lock these so you don't click on them accidentally while you're modeling. So go ahead and select them in the outliner and click on this lock symbol. And now you can go ahead and move around and you will not be able to click on them, which is what we want. So now we can start building our spline cage, which is what you usually want to do when you're building complex surfaces or vehicles that have organic forms. Let's start by going to the top view, and then let's select our control point curve over here. Click down and make sure you select on the one that says control point curve. And we're going to trace half of this model so that we can then mirror it over. let's start at the top over here. And we're going to try to make this with as few points as possible so that we get a nice curved surface. The first 2 points should be aligned so that you can get continuity. And then we're just going to trace these like so. Every time you go around a curve that has a defined shift or a defined roundness, you probably want to use around 3 to 4 points to define that. And you can tell that I'm clicking outside because the CVs will kind of bend inwards. So you want to kind of create them like that, and we can adjust them later anyway. Again, we have a defined curve here, so I'm going to use 3 or 4 points. And the last one, again, they both should be aligned. And right-click to accept. I'm going to press 1 so I can go ahead and edit these. And all I want to do is just make sure they match this reference image. And you can just click on them and move them, or you can click and press G so you can transform them in a given axis. Right now, just clicking on them is a little bit faster. And this is an area that needs a little bit of work. And again, you want to do this for most things like vehicles, and it's called a spline cage. Helps you kind of create the base forms and your initial guides. It'll also kind of help you explore if you're doing concepting. It'll help you explore the volumes so you can kind of create a sketch, if you will, in space. And you can always change these as you go, but there's going to be a point where you start building surfaces, and these are the curves that you'll use to build them. That takes a little bit longer to kind of go backwards. So you just want to make sure you get these right in the beginning. I'm going to select these 2 points, press S, and scale them down, and press 0. They were already aligned, but I just want to show you that that's a way to make sure that they're aligned. Double check this area. Great, so that looks pretty good. Next, we're going to do this canopy area, and we're going to follow the same process. So go ahead and click on the control point curve, and let's start at the top. Click on the center here. The first 2 points should be aligned. Let's keep going. And if you find that you're starting to snap on other points, you can always hold control to toggle snap off, and you can let it go to go back on snapping. So I'm going to hold down control in some of these areas so I don't get that tangency snap. And again, I'm clicking a little bit outside of this since the curve inside will bend. And then just making sure that these areas have support points, maybe 3 or 4. And then the last 2 should align. Right-click to accept, and again, press 1 so we can go to edit these points. I'm going to move this down and then adjust these points. In most vehicles, if it's a spaceship or a car, you'd want to get some sort of blueprint going. I do know that car designers sometimes just start with concept design from one of the designers, and then they start to block these out based on regular proportions. So they'll set the general size and then start blocking out these curves and just kind of sketch them out until they get a nice volume. Things always change in production, so they're just kind of trying things out as they go. In this case, we do have a bit of a guide, so we're just going to stick to it. Great, so that looks pretty close. Next, we're going to go to the right side, and we're going to design this top canopy area. In the perspective view, you can see that our canopy is just on the same level as our bottom line of this drone. And it's actually up here, so make sure you select it in perspective or in your outliner. And then let's go to the side view and let's move it up. So press G and move it up the Z-axis. And you can see it's at a bit of an angle. So let's go ahead and rotate it. Press R. And I'm going to show you how to freestyle rotate. Press F. and then click on the left point and then on the far right point. And now you can just hover upwards. And that means that it kind of pivoted around the first point and then your control area was there. So we just kind of used that as an easier way to rotate around a pivot. Next, you'll notice that this is still not perfectly aligned. So press 1, and we're just going to do our best to just kind of put these points down. And you just want to move them up and down in this view because we've already defined the shape from the top. So you can see that you can move these this way, but if you were to move them on the x-axis, then you're actually changing that top shape, which is not what we want. So let's go back to the right view, and let's just start selecting these points and adjusting them. And this will give it a nice subtle curvature once we attach the canopy to the rest of the body. These curves will also introduce some sort of curvature challenge, which is good because most organic vehicles and spaceships have these, and I'll show you how to solve those. Now that we've defined our top shapes, you can see that they're still pretty flat. So you need some volume going upwards, and let's go to the right view to do that. And click on the line tool over here. And we're going to create this just with a straight line and then subdivide it. So click on the first point over here to snap. And click on the end point here to snap there as well. And right click to accept. Let's go to our perspective view and see what that did. So it connected it with a straight line, but how do we get this curvature? Well, it's pretty simple. You can just press Shift S and it raises the degree, which means it's adding additional detail. And we want to do that 3 times. So this is 1, 2, and 3. So now this is a 4-degree curve. When you click on it, you press 1, you can see there's 1 degree, 2, 3, and 4. And it also says that here, which just means that there's more points on the surface. And when you press 1, you can edit these points. So I'm just going to select all of them, go to the right view, press G, and move them upwards. And now I'm just going to adjust it so it matches the reference. And again, you want to use as few points as possible so you get the cleanest curves when you're building a spline cage. But sometimes you have to subdivide, so don't be afraid of adding additional points when necessary. Great, that looks good. So we're almost there. The next thing is we need to define this kind of angled shape. So go ahead and select this bottom, go to the right view, press Shift D, and let's move it upwards. And again, you'll notice it's at an angle, so let's press R, and then press F to freestyle rotate as well. Click on the first end point and then the last end point. And let's kind of rotate it this way. And then press 1, just like we did with the canopy, so that we can adjust these points to match. Great, so now in our perspective view, you can see there's a little bit more of a volume indication between these curves, which is what you want in a spline cage. And before we move on, it's good practice to just select everything and mirror it just to see what it looks like in a more volumetric manner. So now you can kind of see the size of everything and see if everything's kind of to your liking. Okay, go ahead and undo that. And now we're just going to move on to some surface blocking. This step is pretty easy. Go ahead and select these bottom and top curves, and then press L to loft them. Right click to accept. And now you have this basic shape down here, which is the main part of the body. And now we want to loft this canopy. This one has a slightly different process since we need some curvature here and continuity. You want to select this curve, press E, and we're going to extrude it towards the left. The reason is that this is going to create a surface kind of arching over and it doesn't have any information in what kind of continuity it'll have once it reaches the middle. And that's important when you mirror because it needs that continuity from left to right in the center area. Otherwise, you get a seam. So now that we have this guide surface over here, you can go ahead and select this curve and press H to hide it. We can now create a nice canopy surface by selecting the edge of the surface and shift selecting this curve over here and pressing L. So you'll see it says G1, and that's what we want. Press OK. And now you can go ahead and delete this surface on the left that was helping us. So select it and press X. And if you want to see what this looks like once it's mirrored over, go ahead and select the canopy, press Alt X to mirror it, and click on this red handle over here. Click on Merge Halves Together, and OK. I'm going to go ahead and hide the edges. So right click on this toggle render circle, click on Show Edges, and then let's select this red material. So you'll see it's nice and smooth. So this is pretty much the process you're going to follow when you build vehicles like cars. You're going to create a spline cage and then create these really basic surfaces that then need to be attached to one another and then refined as you go. Okay, now we're just going to press 2 and select these curves and then H to hide them. Press 3 so we can select this face and Shift X to delete it. So we're back to just half. And now we're just going to go back to our regular rendering mode by right-clicking on the toggle render mode, clicking on the gray sphere, and show edges has to be on. Okay, so now in some cases you might need to split these up by imprinting curves, but in this case we should be able to just press 2, select this bottom edge and this top edge of this surface, and then press L. But you'll notice that it creates this really bad organic form here, and that's not what we want. But that's okay. All we need to do is change this to a G0 connection, which means there's no continuity from one surface to the next. You can see it just kind of breaks, and that's okay. What we're going to do is just create really hard surface connections like this so we can block it out, and then figure out a way to kind of soften that connection between them. But again, this is the process that you'll probably follow with other vehicles and cars, where you just kind of create a very blocky system here between surfaces, and then you figure out how to blend them. You do want to have that control on how you blend them, so it's important to keep things blocky, just like when you're sculpting, when you start from something really big and kind of simple, and then you start refining as you go to the details. So how do you blend between surfaces? Well, you need to kind of cut out a space between them so that we can then re-merge them with a nice kind of fluid surface. And there's multiple ways of doing this. You can kind of create any shape you want and project it. Or if you want to keep them kind of even spaced, you can create a pipe or an offset. In this case, we're going to create a pipe by using a curve from the surface. So go ahead and select this canopy curve and press Shift D and right click to accept. And I'm going to press period so you can see what it looks like. And when I duplicate surfaces off a curve, I do like to rebuild them so that you don't have too many issues when creating a pipe. Sometimes it works, sometimes it doesn't. So I'd rather just rebuild them, make sure it works right off the bat. And I like to just click on points and give it a pretty high number, around 400. Press OK. So it'll retain the shape and have enough points to create a nice fluid shape. Let's go back to regular view, select that curve, and you're going to press P for pipe. Next, we're just going to make this maybe this big. It's around 1 unit, or just kind of follow along visually if it's a different measurement on your end. And right click to accept that. And you see that this edge is kind of perfectly aligned with where our surface ends. And when you're creating a Boolean, which is what we're going to do next, you do want them to kind of go a little bit further to make sure it's cutting it out completely. So I'm going to shift select these in face mode. Face mode is 3. And right click to accept that. Great. So you can Boolean these individually, or you can just connect these surfaces and Boolean them once, which is what I'll do. So I'm going to select the canopy, shift select this main surface, and this one, why not? Press J, and now they're joined as one surface. Next, go ahead and shift select this pipe and press Q. And you'll see that that pipe is cutting out some of that canopy and some of that body. So that's going to give us the chance to kind of create a connection that flows between them. And let's right click to accept. Great. So all you need to do now is let's hide this curve. So in curve mode, press H to hide it. And let's select this top edge and this other edge and press L. So now you'll see there's G1 continuity between them. It kind of gave it the space for them to kind of come together. And the way this works is pretty much if you select this edge and press Shift B, it's creating a bridge. It can kind of interpolate this directionality with this other directionality. And you can choose, for example, what kind of continuity you want. And you can also choose the type of tension you want. So keep that in mind when you're creating blends between surfaces. This one was just the automatic out of the box one, where it just kind of created continuity between two surfaces. But you do have the control to increase or decrease tension between these two curves. So if this kind of goes this way, this has more dominance over the bottom one. And you'll see this kind of S curves transitions. And maybe that's something you want, maybe not, but it's something to keep in mind. Okay, now that we've created this surface, let's go to body mode and see what it looks like when we mirror it over. So select both of them, Alt X, and let's mirror it on the X axis and merge halves together. Press OK. And let's just see what this looks like in this red shaded mode without the edges. You'll see some gap here because they're not merged. So let's select everything and press J. And now it's one fluid surface. Next, I'm going to show you how to create bevels or fillets with a variable radius. Go ahead and turn on your edge mode again. Make sure it's on. And then press 2. And we're just going to select one of these edges here. They're all connected, so you just need to select one at a time. And what you could do is just drag this handle outwards a little bit, or downwards in this case, and just give it a bit of a sharp fillet there. So you see it's kind of the same size throughout, but what we want is maybe a thinner fillet in the front and a wider one in the back. And without accepting just yet, just press V to add a variable point. And now you can just hover over the edge and click once here, and then click once around here. So now you'll see two of these handles, which are the exact same fillet handles that we saw earlier, except you have two. So you can choose radius here, maybe keep it a little bit thin here, and then you have another handle here that allows you to widen it, and that's what we want. So now you can kind of see that it starts small and it goes bigger and bigger as it goes backwards, giving it a little bit more interest in general. Okay, let's do that again for the bottom area, but you can see that it is hollow. So what you can do is press 4, select your model, and then press Shift J, and that'll patch any open hole. And right click. Okay, let's go back to edge mode. Select this edge down here, and press V. Click once around here. Let's do that again. Press V, once here, once there. And remember, you need to actually hover to create an initial fillet, which is what I didn't do here. Looks like a chamfer, so let's go in the opposite direction. Press V, select once here and once near the back. And now we have the same two options. So let's keep that size over there, and let's widen this one out a little bit. Great. At this stage, we can go ahead and hide these reference images since they're getting in the way, and we have the basic form figured out. So go ahead and just click on this light bulb. And I'm going to toggle transparency, which you can do over here. Toggle X-ray mode. Sometimes you don't want it. And turn off my edges so I can kind of see. Just want to see a clearer picture of this general form. It's looking pretty smooth. So we can go ahead and move on to the propeller openings in the back area. So let's go to our top view, and let's go back to our regular render mode, show edges. And let's turn on our grid again. And go ahead and select the cylinder down here. And let's create a cylinder around this area. And just click once and hover outwards. Left click again. And if you're new to this, remember when you see this turn red, it means it's about to create a Boolean when you've created a new solid or an object on top of another object. And that's not what we want. So press B to create a new body. And that'll just use your main surface as a guide, but it won't create a Boolean. And I just want to make this a little bit taller than the actual height of this drone. And right click to accept. And in body mode, I'm just going to move it down so they intersect. Just like this. And from the top view, just want to make sure we have the right scale here. I'm going to press S twice. I want this to be a little bit bigger and have enough kind of room, breathing room between the edges. Press Alt X and let's mirror it on the X axis. Right click and now select the main body. Press Q and then select one cylinder and shift select the other and right click. Okay, so now let's kind of focus in on this propeller assembly area. Go ahead and press 2 and let's just give this a bit of a chamfer or a bevel. Let's see which one looks better. I've seen pretty wide chamfers on some of these, so let's do that. Repeat it for the bottom. And again, let's select that edge and let's give that a bit of a fillet. And we'll just do 1/2 for now, and we're going to mirror that over later on, so don't worry about it just yet. Next, we're going to create this little assembly area. So what I'd like to do is create where the propellers are going to attach, and we want that to be centered. So let's click on cylinder, and let's hover over here, and you should see this little circle or dot in the center, which indicates where you can kind of create it in the center. Click once and hover outwards, maybe something around this size. And in perspective view, just make sure you kind of size it down a little bit. Let's go to the right view, turn on X-ray view. And let's just place it maybe a little bit lower. You might have to adjust this once we create the propellers, but for now, this looks pretty good. Go ahead and give this a bit of a fillet as well. And let's go to our top view. Next, we're going to create a propeller arm or something that will support this attachment. So click on center rectangle and let's just create a little rectangle here. And hold Control as you're moving it on the y-axis and then hover over the center of the circle. Next, let's press 1 and let's just move it outwards here. And press 2 to go back to edge mode and S so we can scale it out. Great. So right now we're just blocking out this size here. You could also do this with a box, but I'd rather do it with a rectangle. Press B and then D, and this will let you fillet those points. Make sure they're pretty round and right click. And let's just adjust this down here so that there's a bit of a distance, but it kind of feels like the same distance all around. So now you have this arm sticking out, and all you need to do is press 3, select this face, and now you can just move it upwards and right click. Press 2 and select this curve we created and H to hide it. Next, we're also going to select this edge and just chamfer that. And maybe a slight chamfer for the bottom one as well. And while we're here, we might as well just select these edges once more and give them a bit of a bevel or a fillet. Let's select this body since it's a bit big and just shrink it down. So we might have to adjust the height of this, but for now, it looks pretty good. Let's go ahead and update the other side. So select the main body, Alt X, and mirrored on the X axis. Make sure merge halves together is on. And let's do that for the arms as well. Alt X, mirrored on the X axis, and right click. And let's see what this looks like in this red mode. Great, so it's starting to look like a drone, but all we're missing are the propellers. So let's create some lines that will be the guides to a loft. And to do that, let's go to the top view and let's go back to our regular shaded mode and show edges. And now we're going to create 5 lines that will be used to define the shape. So with the line tool, just create one line like this. And then we're going to go use the rectangular array. And let's just make sure we have a total of 5. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Right click to accept. And now we're going to shape them and space them out so that we can create the actual shape of our blade. So press 1 and let's shrink these down a little bit. And maybe push them a little bit closer. And then we're going to shrink this one down. And then grab these 2 points here and just flatten them. So you can kind of see that one side is going to be straighter and the other one's going to have this kind of curved region. Let me adjust this one a little bit further. And in this area, we want it to kind of curve out a little bit. So select that, press Shift S, which will add an extra point. And in point mode, select it and move it down a little bit to give it that curvature. And maybe it's looking a little thick here, so I'm just going to scoot this in a little bit. Okay, so now if you were to loft this, you would just get this straight blade. But there's actually some curvature that we need to address. So let's go ahead and select these 2 edges here and press R. And then we're going to rotate them on the y-axis around 15 degrees. Next, we're going to select these 2 edges over here, press R, and rotate them 6 degrees. Great. So now let's see what we have here. Press 2, select these 2 first curves here, and press L. Go ahead and hide this one. Select this edge, and now select the remaining curves, and press L once more. You have a bit of a curvature here that will allow for lift and thrust if you were to create a real drone. And right click to accept. Now in body mode, make sure you select both that initial piece and the secondary piece and press J to join them. Great. It looks like a blade, but it does need a little bit of thickness. But before that, let's just go ahead and select these curves and hide them. So press 4, go to body mode and select it, and then press F and search for thicken. And go ahead and drag this handle out a little bit. And right click. And I do want to soften this transition, so I'm going to go to edge mode by pressing 2 and shift selecting both edges, and then just giving it a bit of a fillet here. Maybe something like this. All right, next, it looks like it's a bit even throughout in terms of thickness, and we want it to kind of slant a bit. So press 2, we're going to select any of these top edges here and give it a bit of a chamfer. And maybe one side would be chamfered and not the other, but in this case, it's just for a little bit of detail on the top, and that should be fine. So let's go to top view, select your new blade, press G twice, and just place it around here. You can see it kind of intersects. Let's just shrink it a little bit and move it into place. Now, we do want to move it up a little bit to where this assembly would be. And all you need to do now is select it once more and click over here where it says radial array and just hover over the center of the cylinder. And let's keep it around 8 so it looks kind of interesting with that many. Sometimes they only use 3 or 2, but it might look a little too empty for this design, and it's nicer to have it a little bit fuller in this case. Right click to accept and press Alt X so we can mirror it on the X axis. And now let's just go to the red shaded mode, turn off our transparency and turn off edge mode to see what we have. So now we can add a little bit more detail by using some rectangles to cut out some lights. So go ahead and go to your profile view and let's create a center rectangle. Press 2 to select it and make sure your edges are being shown so you can kind of see where it can go. And then let's just scale it down a little bit. We're going to use this to cut out some lights on the body. I want the light to kind of wrap around, and we're just going to use this rectangle to cut it out. Now, this does have that angle, so go ahead and press R and rotate it on the x-axis a little bit. And then let's press Shift D on that and move it to the back. Right click, and then let's place it upwards a little bit. And I want this one to be a little bit bigger, so I'm going to press S twice to scale it up. And maybe angle it a little bit to match the direction of the body. And let's give this area a bit of a fillet. So press 1 on these points, press B and D, and now just hover it a little bit. Give it some rounding there. And let's repeat that for the back. B and D, hover outwards. Right click. Great, now press 4, select the main drone body, and then press C for cut. Now select the front rectangle and shift select the rear rectangle and right click to accept. Great, so now these pieces are totally separate, and that allows you to add different materials in the render time. And the cool thing is that you can actually preview some materials here in plasticity. And to do that, just left click on the toggle render mode, and you'll see everything's kind of chromed out here, which is the base material and everything. And you can change that by making sure you're in body mode, press 4. And let's select the body, then press M. And in this case, we might just keep it kind of white. So metalness is fine. Roughness, you can increase that to around maybe 0.4. And let's try that for these little caps here. Press M. Try maybe a gray here. Increase the roughness. And let's see if we should change the color of these blades. And let's change the color of this front light. So select it, press M, roughness to 1. And let's do the rear light. Press M, and let's turn this to red, roughness to 1. So at this stage, you can go ahead and use Boolean operations or create even more lofts to add more detail. And of course, you can add different textures in post, whether you're in Blender or in C4D, Maya, whatever 3D app you're using after this, you can modify it further. And let's try one more thing. Let's go ahead and select this edge, shift select this one as well, press Shift D, right click to accept that, and then let's go to the top view, press O to offset so we can grow it a little bit. Right click, press Shift I, and click on the body. Now it'll create a projected curve, so let's go ahead and hide it. You'll see it's projected over here. And next I'm going to press 3, select this face and that face and this one as well. And then press Shift D to duplicate it and just give it a bit of thickness. I just want to preview what this would look like if the canopy had a different material. So I'm just going to apply a little bit of thickness. And in practice, you would have some sort of seam or panel line here so that it wouldn't be overlapping here, or you could just delete the underlying face. But for preview purposes, I just wanted to see what this would look like. Maybe there's a camera inside of this canopy so that the body remains like a simple airfoil. And let's just see if we can darken this, see what that looks like. And make this a little bit off-white so you can see the front a little bit better. So here's my final version with a few tweaks. I did add a few more booleans here in the back with an array of cylinders. And then from the top, I created a rectangle to cut this out and a few insets here and bevels throughout so it doesn't look so sharp. And remember, you can use these techniques to create additional vehicles, props, industrial design objects, or anything that requires organic forms. Let me know what you think, and I'm excited to see what you create. See you next time.